So delighted now to be joined by Colin Ryan, looking ahead to Clare's final Munster Championship game against Cork. And Colin, a great chance for Clare to get back to another Munster final.
Yeah, I think the main job would have been to make sure that they get out of Munster, and thankfully after Saturday evening that's the box ticked. But it's nice to have the carrot at the end of the round robin, where they can have a right cut at Limerick down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, or right cut at Cork, below in Páirc Uí Chaoimh next Sunday, and especially with the scoring difference on Saturday, they have a chance to get into a Munster final, which will obviously be a big bonus. So yeah, I think that they'll be really looking forward to the week, and especially after getting the Limerick game out of their system, and there'll probably be an opportunity for a couple of players to show up really well on Sunday now with possibly a couple of injuries. I don't know how bad I suppose Tony and Mark Rogers are going to be, but there may be a chance for other lads to come in and show maybe what they have.
And you look at the response to, I suppose, to that Mark Rogers hit, and you look at the intensity that Clare brought in the first half. In particular, it's a case of transferring that down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Sunday as well.
Yeah, and I think when you look back, and I suppose hindsight's a great thing, but when you look back at the reaction to even Mark Rogers getting the hit on Saturday evening, and maybe the reaction to Shane O'Donnell getting the hit against Limerick, there was definitely an increase in intensity. And I think Shane kind of said it in his interview afterwards that this Clare team are really good when they're physical and in people's faces. And I think they probably realised in the Limerick game that maybe they just lost sight of that a small bit. But when they regrouped and went at it and brought that intensity on Saturday evening against Tipperary, it just goes to show how strong a team they are, and that they've a right chance, and they're right up still at the top level of the table in terms of the teams that are looking to win in All-Ireland. So it would have given them a lot of confidence, but they probably realised that they needed that intensity every day they go out.
And that Clare win against Tipp probably puts a bit of a fly in the ointment for Cork, who kind of have to go down against Clare now and take care of their own business, when if results had perhaps gone a different way, they'd have been in the Munster final, and now they have to kind of make sure they take care of business against Clare from their own perspective.
Yeah, and when you look at kind of their scenario, they have a couple of injuries to deal with as well, in the sense that I see there Darragh Fitzgibbon is out for the rest of the Munster Championship. He's a big loss to them. Obviously they have Downey and Ciarán Joyce already injured, with Joyce being out for the year. But I see there even Robbie O'Flynn. So they're picking up a couple of knocks and things along the way. And I think the Munster Championship is kind of like that. It's very attritional. You look at obviously Limerick going out without Aaron Gillane. Now, I know it didn't affect them that much against Clare, but when teams pick up little injuries, they just have to be able to deal with them, and that's why maybe having the depth in the squad, and having Niall O'Farrell and Dermot Stretch really stepping up this year. And obviously you see there Ian Galvin came in for Mark Rogers, in the first half the last day, and did excellently. So the depth will really be tested, and I think going down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Sunday, Clare know that maybe they have to be at it, from the get-go. And I suppose it turns into a different scenario now, where they have to work out how they deal with maybe the pace in Cork's forward line, and how they're going to deal with that. But they definitely looked a lot more balanced on Saturday evening with the couple of restructural changes that they made against Tipperary.
And is that a case of keeping Colin at 6, do you reckon? And of course you're looking at the other problems that Cork pose with Hayes and Connolly inside, and if you leave Colin sit at 6, you're kind of wondering what Shane Barrett can do if he gets into a bit of space as well.
Yeah, and I think Clare were really good at that in the past. I don't think yes, I know. Listen, John will be the first to tell you, a yard slows down somewhere along the line, but I think, his speed of thought is still right up there, and you could see that on Saturday evening, that he put himself in the right places to cut out the danger. Now, I also think that Brian Lohan is really, really good at cornerback, so I think that change helps, and also I think with Colin Malone at wing forward, Colin's natural game is to come back and help. So I think with those changes, it kind of naturally kind of made us a lot more balanced in terms of, allowing Niall O'Farrell and Dermot Ryan to go mark their men and pick them up and go at it, and maybe, Colin Malone dropping back a small bit. So, yeah, listen, Cork will pose different dangers, but it's going to be up to Clare to figure them out. But I think, John getting another game into him, especially after getting 0 minutes in the first 2 games, you could see towards the end that, he was tiring, but that game is going to bring him on leaps and bounds.
And is Darragh Lohan maybe the key to this defensive structure when you look at the pace that's in the Cork team? He might have surprised a few people that day against Limerick when you look at Adam English, one of the quickest hurlers in the country, and Lohan right there with him and passing him out. So when you look at the pace that's in the Cork team, is he the man that could counteract that from a Clare perspective?
Yeah, listen, I think Darragh was probably struggling small with the midfield, but I like his aggression, I like his pace. But whereas you put him in a cornerback, it kind of simplifies the game for him. So I'd be looking at him going he could pick up an Alan Connolly or Brian Hayes, and I wouldn't be too worried. He'll bring that aggression and he'll bring that energy inside. And it just means that we can match up kind of physically and go one-on-one. And I'm not worried about kind of the pace inside because Adam has it and Darragh Lohan has it. So Niall O'Farrell has it and Dermot Wright. It's not that our back line is that slow, and I think there's a perception out there that maybe it is, but I think with the structure of having maybe two really fast cornerbacks and two really fast wing backs, we should be able to deal with that pace, especially with, I suppose, the experience of Davy Mack and John down the centre, holding forth and making sure that they're having lads in the right positions and talking to them and communicating with them.
And further up the field, Rodgers will probably be touch and go with the head injury sustained. So what do you reckon the plan will be in terms of getting that same scoring output that they got from all the forwards against Tipperary?
Yeah, listen, I suppose it's amazing to think this when you went into this year that I would say Sods and Tony have had relatively quiet campaigns, even though they've done a lot of the unseen work. They've kind of changed their role a small bit. It has been, the scoring outlets have come from kind of different ways. You look at Ian Galvin, you look at Dermot Stretch, Sean Rinn the first day out against Waterford. We're going to need different lads to pick up the scoring slack a small bit. You had Ian Galvin come in the last day and end up with 1-2. He could have possibly ended up with about 1-7. So he had a lot of scoring opportunities. And I think, Ian Galvin will be looking at management and going I know you've kind of been pigeonholed as maybe an impact sub down through the last couple of years, but, he'll be looking at trying to maybe get a start. Shane Meehan could be looking at, a start. David Reedy obviously would probably be disappointed he didn't start the last day. So, Davy Fitz, do they get minutes into Davy, next Sunday, and obviously having recovered from his injury and try and hurl him into form. So, there'll be a couple of lads there, I'm sure, putting their hand up this week and kind of going, let me have a go and see what's going to happen. But they're definitely going to have to be maybe a few structural changes. I don't see them risking Tony if the ankle injury is, and I wouldn't risk him either. But then again, it'll come down to how severe that is. You don't want Tony to injure an ankle now and be worried about the rest of the year, especially when we've qualified now for the All-Ireland series. And, we don't need to risk him next Sunday, if we really want to go at, I suppose, the All-Ireland series.
And are you looking at Dermot Stritch being nailed down to start after he really announced himself in Thurles? And sure, Clare knew what they had, but he really announced himself to the rest of the country of the talent that he has.
Yeah, listen, his potential has been undoubtedly, obvious, I think, down through the years. But I suppose you don't want to rush a lad in like that too quickly. He is quite young still, but I suppose when you're knocking the door down in training and you want to play, sometimes age doesn't matter, and obviously he has been doing that. I just think he offers so much to the balance of the Clare setup in terms of his athleticism and obviously then, his ability to take a score. But when we're looking at here going, we're worrying about how we're going to deal with Cork's forward line. Cork will obviously be the same down there, kind of looking, going, how are we going to deal with Clare's forward line? So, I think we do pose problems to other defences that maybe other teams don't. So, I think we maybe underestimate that at times. We kind of focus on maybe where we're weak, but we can go at teams in our forward line on the other side.
And there's been a few voices in the last couple of days that say that maybe Clare should be happy with their lot in terms of the Munster Championship and take their third and perhaps an easier route without that more intense Munster final and take third place and move into the All-Ireland series after that. What would you say to those sorts of thoughts?
Listen, if you're a player, you want to win every game you're going out, and Clare will look at it as an opportunity to get to a Munster final, and obviously first and foremost they'll be looking to just put up a performance next Sunday and put their best foot forward. And I think if they win it and they're looking at a Munster final, I don't think you'll have any complaints out of anybody. Again, they're not going to go out there wanting to lose. Do I think it'll be the worst thing in the world? Like, no, obviously, because they'll still be in the All Ireland series, but definitely knowing the calibre of these lads and the experienced heads around the place, the view this week will be we're going hammer and tongs to beat Cork below and Páirc Uí Chaoimh. So, I know these lads, I know their attitude, and they trying to convince them to go out and take a loss would be hard to come by. So, and especially with Brian, at the forefront of it all, Brian isn't going to do that. But their season now is completely opened up, and I suppose the only thing that they'll probably be deciding on going down on Sunday is, do we need to risk somebody who's maybe not 100% fit? And that win last Saturday has really just allowed them to kind of go, if somebody needs a bit of time to recover, we may not risk them. But, that's about the only thing that last Saturday has done really to the psyche. I think it's just kind of looked and gone, do we need to rest up this player and Tony and Mark Rogers and not force them back into action too soon that might put them at risk for the rest of the championship?
And coming at it from the other point of view, then, it's been so long since Clare have had that Munster title success that it would mean so much to the players and the county as well if they were to get over the line this year.
Yeah, of course. Listen, the goal at the start of every year is to win an All Ireland, but I'd imagine there's kind of like a sub goal nearly with this group of players that getting to a Munster final and winning a Munster final would be a right carrot, I suppose, especially having not had one in so long. So, like, I don't think, like I heard Peter Duggan talk about it, I don't think these lads need much motivation. I don't think a Munster final is going to motivate them. I think going down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh and going up against perceivably one of the best teams in the country and showing, I suppose, your best stuff and making sure that they know that you're still around, I think that will be probably at the forefront of the Clare management and the Clare players this week, rather than having to win to get to a Munster final. I think they'll reassess everything after Sunday evening and kind of figure out where they are.
And you touched on the psyche of the players, and Kieran McGeeney said it as well after the Armagh Ulster final victory, that the players themselves don't really care too much, and that if you're in a dressing room, you're going to want to win every game and win as many titles as possible.
Yeah, of course, that's the idea. Like that, you don't get a chance to win too many things. So, like, these lads will be going in on Sunday and just making sure that they pick up or perform to their best, and then figure everything out then after that. Like, so, like, these lads are high level athletes, and they don't really look at what's around them, or they don't read what's in the media. They just want to make sure that they win every game and enjoy it and put a smile on Clare people's faces.